Hi, everyone. This is Trish Kendall, your host for the Choose and Become interview series. I am here. I've already been chatting it up before we even hit record with my guest, Stroud. Will you just say hi really quick?
Hello, everybody.
So before we dive into the interview with so Em and I connected a little bit ago through a mutual friend and acquaintance, Nick Morgan. So Nick, thank you. I'll do a shout out to you. I've been excited. We've had this on the calendar for a bit because you've been traveling like a mad woman, which we'll get into later. So I've been looking forward to this. But for those of you who are new to the show, let me take a step back before we move forward to give you a little bit of context of the interview series. So I made 5 critical choices on my journey from the pit of despair to the peak of success. Enduring success. Those 5 critical choices, I made a first choice. I committed to a 2-way agreement. I built trust in myself and then inspired the trust of others. I created community and belonging. And then finally, I made what was the most important choice to me, the 5th choice, which was to embrace my boundless capacity to give love and to receive love. So this interview series is meant to pull some of the lessons and experience and wisdom of people who I admire to get your perspective on your journey to enduring success and how these 5 choices might have played out in your journey and in your life. And so I'm always super curious to get someone else's perspective. So, I'm going to get into it. I do have to tell, for those people who don't know when I met you, I first met Orange. Then I met M. So there's a little foreshadowing for you. M is a killer global keynote speaker. Two podcasts, host of 2 podcasts, right? And the one that I really follow right now is Simply Feel Better. Yeah, which it just inspires me all the time. An author, 2 times TEDxer, and co-founder of the global movement Laugh, Think, Play. That's all I'll say now. Tell us about you.
I mean, it's so delicious, when you get an intro like that and then you hear and you're like, oh yes, I have done those things. Oh yes, I really have. And, and it's one of those moments. And Orange is one of my clowns. So I am a very proud clown. And when I say clown, a lot of people get scared. A lot of people go into that sort of, the Hollywood thing of it, or they get fearful. But the way that I take clowning and the craft of clowning is that think more like the Shakespearean fool and the court jester. So we are the observers of life, and we use kindness and joy and humor to say what we see is going on. And there's a deep craft of clowning, and there's been a deep craft of clowning around the world for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And that's where I come from. And Orange is this part of me, because clowns are just parts of ourselves, who is the kindest and the most joyful part of M. And I co-wrote my first book, Lessons from a Clown, with Orange. And indeed, when we first met, you first got to see Orange as opposed to meeting M. And actually reconnecting with clowning was one of the main driving forces of me becoming the spark of Laugh, Think, Play, because it helped me work out my purpose, that indeed I am here to help the world laugh a little bit more, think a little bit more with kindness, and play a little bit more. Because when we do that, we feel better. And that is, in essence, what informs all of my work around the world.
One of the reasons I've been so looking forward to this interview is many of the companies and the clients that I work with, the leaders that I work with, I think they're struggling a little bit with how to get their people to connect. Maybe younger generation that have never connected before in person, the older generations of us that used to and don't do it anymore. So I think this conversation will get infused a little bit, but it is one of the things that I am drawn to with Laugh, Think, Play is the movement itself is universal. Everybody.
Yeah. And this is one of those things that I realized that It doesn't matter where we're from. It doesn't matter who we pray to or don't pray to. It doesn't matter what our sexual orientation is. It literally does not matter. All of those three things we all do as human beings. And actually, as a result of that, when we do that, we can connect. Exactly. We can build better relationships. We can engage with people on a deep human level. And let's face it, the world is in a pretty dark place at the moment. And for me, one of the reasons that it's so important is actually when you take away all of the status and what we do and jobs and all of that stuff, fundamentally we're all humans who I believe we all want to have good things happen for us in our lives. And so that's one of the drivers behind Laugh, Think, Play.
Oh my gosh, I'm totally going
Oh, yes.
off
Sorry.
my
Whoopsie.
interview. No, I love this because here's the other thing that popped in my head, and this will probably get confused too, is what you just said. I believe in my whole heart of hearts. And you know that my philosophy and where my message is around giving and receiving love. And I what I love is how you articulate laugh, think, play. It's almost like it's the same thing that I feel and believe, coming at it a little bit different, where mine might be, oh my gosh, here's a really hard and tough story of resilience and giving and receiving love, and laugh, think, play is from that, like, laugh, play a little,
Yeah.
think kindness, and both are so powerful. But I could just imagine, like, what organization or what team or what leader doesn't want their people or ourselves to have a little bit more of that in our daily lives. So, okay, now we're going to get into it. So everybody has their own definition of success, right? We all have our own definition of success. What I am curious about is, what does it mean to you to create enduring success? What does enduring success mean to Em?
It means freedom and it means wonder. And what I mean by that is enduring success means that I have freedom and the world around me has freedom to create, connect, and explore the world through curious eyes. And for me, enduring success means that I have freedom so that I can make that choice, so that I can live and carry on doing the different things that I do. And the wonder piece, I think as adults, I think we quite often underestimate and don't pay attention to the wonder that is wonder. You know, that thing of really paying attention to the fact that, oh, look, the sun is peeping out behind the clouds. I'm British, so obviously I'm going to talk about the weather. You know, it's
So that's a big deal.
Exactly. It's a big deal. It's sunny here. It's amazing. But it's that thing of, I think so often we can dismiss these tiny moments. And as kids, we see the world through wonder because it's almost like the first time that we see it. And for me, my sense of enduring success is when I'm living as much as I can. And of course, I have my ups and downs because it's, I'm human, living my life through wonder and seeing it through that world and that sort of through that lens. That to me is enduring success. Then everything else will flow from that place, from those two words.
Are you at a place where it's such a habit to see the world through wonder that you don't realize it? Or do you continue to have a thoughtful, deliberate reflection?
Mixture.
Of wonder in your
Mixture.
Day?
One of the gifts that clowning gave me was to really pay attention and to really come back to that place of wonder. And there's one thing doing it when I'm in clown states or when I'm orange, but there's another thing to do it when I'm M and I'm traveling and I'm driving somewhere, or I'm at an airport and I'm picking up my kid, or my son is phoning me up because I'm late picking him up, etc., etc. And then those are the moments where wonder is a little bit harder, right? But
it's a wonder that I'm getting
exactly,
to pick him up at all.
I am doing heroically. Do you know how hard it is to get here? But there's a piece for me of like, those are the moments. It's like last night, there was a moment with my son where we were having a conversation and we were throwing a pair of socks towards each other because he's a real sporty kid, right? And I love it. And there was a moment where I genuinely had that moment of wonder of like, I'm having this connection with my kid right now. Nothing else matters. The rest of the world is turned off. How lucky am I? And I think once you've tuned into wonder, you can't help but tune into it more, because it helps you see the world in a different and a kinder light. And I think at the moment that's really important. So I still have to consciously do it, but I'm just really aware of it, you know. And then I think our job, when you kind of get to play and wonder quite a lot, is then to be a wonder giver. And what I mean by this is, kids do it all the time, right? So kids will be doing it amongst each other. And as adults and as grandparents, you go, oh, isn't that lovely? That's a kid. But that's when kids are there and they've got that permission piece. But as adults, I think when you pull in adults and you go, have you seen this? And there was an example where recently I just stopped and I saw this amazing butterfly. And there were some people walking past. And I live in London, right? I live in the UK. We're all quite busy here and it's all quite fast. And I literally saw these two guys and I went, have you seen this? And they were like, what? And I was like, can you come see this butterfly? And they literally stopped and stared and smiled. And they were like, that's amazing. I was like, isn't it? And then they carried on their day. And I just thought, that's an example for me of when you have a moment of wonder. And because I spend a lot of time in that place, it's my job to be a wonder giver, to remind us that we all have that, you know?
Mm-hmm. The first critical choice I made on my journey was to pick up the phone when my sister called. Since then, I have labeled this choice making a first choice, because for me at that point, that was a first choice on my journey to enduring success. Now, that was a pretty profound choice because it gave me a chance to change. Since then, I've made other first choices that weren't so profound. Will you share with us a first choice that you made that when you reflect, you know has impacted your journey to where you're at?
There was one that was really pivotal. And when you ask me that question, it's the first thing that comes into my head. And there was this moment where I was at an event. I was in London, and it was, sort of a fairly prestigious event. And I'd been invited because I'd been doing some cool stuff. It was like, some top entrepreneurial women's event, right? And it was in the city of London. Now, I'm a clown, right? And a performer, as well as working in the world of business for 20 plus years, right? And for some reason, and we're going back maybe 15, 16 years, I remember thinking, well, it's in the city, better wear a suit. So I went and bought myself a suit, right? I then went, I'm going into the city of London. I better wear heels. I don't wear heels. I wear trainers. I can't walk in heels. I look ridiculous in heels. It was just not a good thing, right? And then I thought, well, I'm going into the city. I better buy myself a bag. Now, I don't even know why I'm holding a bag like that, because I don't even know how to hold a bag, because I don't use bags like that, the kind of girly kind of bags. And so I found myself going into this event, and I'd even put my quiff down. My hair's quite long today. So I'd even put my quiff down, right? And I went into this event, and I had put on literally a costume because I thought that's what the world wanted of me. And I remember sitting in that room, and I disappeared. And I went in the lift, and I remember going down the lift, and it was a beautiful day in London. And I still smoked at the time. And I remember sitting outside having a cigarette. And I remember so distinctly going, I am never hiding who I am again. I'm never going to make myself disappear in that way, because I never want to feel like how I felt in that room. And that moment, I could literally trace 15, 16 years, that moment being the start of me moving towards enduring success.
It's amazing. That's an awesome story. And you can tie it all back to that.
Yeah, completely.
And now you get to inspire others, perhaps, to make a choice like that. Mm-hmm. The second critical choice I made on my journey was to commit to a two-way agreement. And I gotta put context to this. So first up, the two-way agreement that I committed to was between me and my sister. She took me in. I was a crystal meth addict. I literally was seconds away from killing myself when she called me. So this was severe. She took me into her home, but it was conditional. So I entered into a two-way agreement. What I learned, or what I experienced, is the force of a two-way agreement when you commit to it. And for me, committing doing what I said I was going to do, and my sister doing what she said she was going to do, and holding each other accountable to that, transformed my feeling from like, I have to do these things to I want to do these things.
Mm.
And you're in the beginning around enduring success, freedom, and wonder hits me hard because I committed to a two-way agreement. What I got back is I found joy in the ordinary and wonder.
Mm.
I was able to realize and be aware of wonder.
Mm.
So, okay, so that's a little bit of background there. When I think about a two-way agreement, we all enter into agreements all the time, informally or formally.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, do you commit to it or not? Is there a two-way agreement that you would share with us
Mm-hmm.
that you committed to,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe what you gave and what you got?
Mm. Yeah. There's been a few, but again, the one that strikes me that I'll share has genuinely impacted my life. And I think maybe, let me think, how old am I now? 45. About 7 years ago, I met this woman at a networking event, and she slightly scared me. And not that many people scare me, but she slightly scared me, right? And this woman and I just connected. And then I remember going and meeting her in one of the kind of grand old buildings of London. And I remember walking in, and she was pristine, and everything looked perfect about her. And I was like, and it turns out that her job is that she's one of the top energy psychologists in the world, right? And she had that innate ability of being able to, as I felt it, see into my soul in a really beautiful, deep and profound way. And she and I, a few weeks came and passed, and she and I made a commitment to each other. And I've only ever done this with 3 people in my entire life. We did a swap, a professional swap. So I said, okay, I would be really curious to work with you and to work through me and my stuff with somebody who's at the top of the game of energy psychology. And she was very curious to come and work with me in terms of how she could become an awesome, amazing speaker and shift her business model. So we agreed to do this swap. And I'm always really skeptical about swaps because quite often one person feels not so, they're really hard to get right.
It's it's not a mutually
Yeah.
beneficial agreement.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's tough to
Yeah. How do you
that.
make sure that it stays beneficial for both sides and everything else like that? Well, fast forward to where we're at now. I honestly can say from my perspective, hand on heart, Laugh, Think, Play would not exist without her. I would not be in a place where I would have been, it's not about confidence, but I don't think I would have given myself the space to really know what my purpose is, because I had to do some deep, deep healing work in order to have the clarity to be able to go, oh yeah, I want to help 1 million people laugh, think and play, right? This stuff doesn't just happen overnight. You need a team, right? You need a support team. And I think also the other piece, I've recently got married, and I know that allowing my heart to let in that level of love has been a direct result because I've worked with her. And on the other side, for her, she has shifted and changed. She went and did a talk, and she came from a place, I think most really top people have had to do a lot of work in themselves in order to get to the place they are. And rather than coming across as the scientist, she now comes across as the human who has a science background. And she engages with audiences that she never thought was possible and tells her story. And more above that, and this is not my story to tell, but more above that, she is now at a place where her business now reflects her excellence. And so for both of us, plus we've also developed a really, really amazing friendship. So it's a two-way thing, and it's a professional thing, and we've boundaried, and then we're friends. And for that, I will always be so grateful.
That's awesome. That's an awesome example. Oh my God. Wait, tell me her name so we can we give her a shout out?
Yes, you can indeed. So her name is Dr. Shoshana Garfield, and she is an amazing human being.
All right. So I'll explore, I'll learn who she is, and I'll give her some shout outs.
Fabulous.
The third critical choice I made on my journey was to build trust. at the point, like, I actually made a conscious choice, an active choice to build trust in myself,
Mm.
because I just didn't, outside of the safety and the construct of my sister, I didn't trust myself in the decisions that I would make, and all of that. What I learned through my actions is that by doing the little things great things can happen. And I just built trust in myself by doing little things every
Mm.
day consistently.
Mm.
And finally, then I was able to inspire the trust of others. Has there been a time in, how about this? Will you share a time where you had to build trust in yourself?
Mm.
Where you had to build trust in yourself. And then if you remember and can recall, what are some of the ways you did it?
I had to reconnect with my performing self and my creative self. So I'm a trained actor, been to drama school, had a year of being just an actor and did pretty well, i.e. I was working for most of the time. But I've always been fascinated with entrepreneurship and business. And I then found myself, probably because of my own thought processes more than anything else, just spending all of my time in the business world. And I sort of started to diminish that I was an improviser, that I was a theatre maker, an actor. And that side of me started to fall away because I was like, well, I better be business. I better be business. And if I tell people in business that I do that, they won't take me seriously, right? And gradually, after a few years, I realized that I have to go back to who I am and I have to trust and I have to rebuild it. And my first show off the West End, my first solo show.
I mean, which is just amazing. I mean, and I love, like, it's just like such a subtle thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so, sorry, I'm like totally interrupting you. I mean, it's such a huge thing. Okay, so your first solo show on the West
So my
End.
first solo show on the West End, and it's one of the small theatres, can I just add? It's one of the small theatres, right? I sort of, I realised that I had to trust my own process and trust my own story and trust all of the craft that I had, but I had sort of lost the muscle memory for. I had to go back to it. So over about 18 months, I worked with my collaborator of quite a few of my shows, and we started to build a script and we started to tell my story. And so my first show was called Coming Out of My Box. And the reason it was called Coming Out of My Box was I realized that I had put myself into various boxes and other people had put me into boxes. So it was like, I'm a teenage boy, except I'm a girl. I'm a businesswoman, except I'm a performer. I'm a victim, except I'm not one. You get the idea. And there was a reclamation of my own trust of self that I could stand up on stage and own it and deliver it and engage with an audience in a way that was telling my truth in a new way that I hadn't done for a very long time. And that did take about 18 months to build the script, to devise it, etc., and get to that place, and then publicity and all of that side. But actually, the most important shift was when I stood up on stage for the first time. And I looked out and there was, 100, 120 people just sitting, staring in a dark. And I suddenly went, you've got this, Em. And I knew I had it because I knew that the story was so mine and so truthful that I had nothing else better to tell at that point. And then that was my first one. And that trust to move back to my creativity then led me to do another couple of shows off the West End. And I'm just about to do my fourth one in December this year. So I've written my fourth show. So that trust of creative self has been a hard fought, but I am so grateful that I've done it for myself.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
For the fourth show. It's amazing. How does someone inspire your trust? How does someone earn M's trust?
I give trust really easily, actually.
Oh, this is always interesting. So keep going.
I have a really big open heart. And as my lovely other half says, she's like, oh my word, you see the good in absolutely everybody. She's like, it's one of the reasons she loves me, but she's also like, oh my word, and for me with trust, there are the different levels, right? I always kind of think, there's the coaching exercise where you have the circles of trust, right? And, so you have your own little name and you have to trust yourself, and then you draw a circle, and then there's like probably your partner and maybe one other person, and then you kind of draw out. And that very close circle of trust is quite small for me. But in terms of going out into the world, I trust that 95% of the world only want good things and want to be happy. And sometimes they might come across in not their best way or the most kind way, but generally that's because they're scared of something, or they haven't dealt with something, or they've just had a bad day. So actually, for me to trust people, I trust easily and I trust hard. But what I do have is a very clear boundary that if somebody then breaks that trust, it takes a lot of work, because they have to evidence to me, like you said, small, consistent actions for me to go,
Yeah.
okay, you merit my trust, because it's my heart, right? Trust is my heart.
Yeah. The fourth critical choice I made was to create community and create belonging. So I'm very curious to have this conversation with you to get your perspective, especially the examples that you gave about your first choice, and even around building trust. I think about that in terms of creating belonging as well. I believe, well, how about this? Growing up, and as a little girl, I never belonged anywhere. My dad forced us to move. I went to 12 different schools before I ever graduated high school. And then not belonging turned into a little bit of a badge of honor. It was right, I don't need to belong. I don't need to be, nor do I want to be a part of anything or community. And actually that was just a lie. Because every bit of me wanted to find my place of belonging. So what I learned for me is I had to create it. And I went out and I took the steps and I made the action. And I have learned that for me, creating belonging takes reciprocity. I want to belong, and that group or whomever wants to help me belong. So how about this? What does it feel like to not belong?
I think I spent a lot of my time feeling like I don't belong, right? Because I think I felt, and I think I thought that you can belong in one set of place, like it's like, there's always a part of me that's like, when I see my friends who are teachers, just using this as an example, they really feel like they belong because they're part of the school, they hang out together, and they're their own kind of club that if you're not a teacher, you don't fully understand, right? And I'm always like, wow, they've got a whole sense of belonging. And I think for me, I realized in terms of not belonging, it was because I was trying to fit into one place, right? And I remember when I wrote my first book, the way that I described it, and this is how I have belonged, and I will come to your question, I promise, is like,
No, I love it.
it's like we're all part of a fruit salad, right? I have a little bit of obsession about fruit. So we're all part of the fruit salad, right? So
Banana.
yeah, banana. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, keep going.
So it's like, there are some people who are really happy just hanging out with strawberries. So my friend who are teachers, let's just say they're all strawberries, right? And they're really happy being strawberries together, right? And they don't need anything else because they're a bunch of strawberries and they're having a great time in the bowl, and they're like, whoop, 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 we're strawberries, yeah? And then you might be an entrepreneur and you might be a blueberry and you might just be really happy hanging out with blueberries, whoop, 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 whoop. And I realized that I can't stay just as one thing. So actually, I can be a blueberry, or I can be a clown that might be a pineapple, and I can be a mum that might be an apple, right? And so suddenly I realized, in order to belong, part of the thing that I had to do was accept that I'm a fruit salad. And so I might dip in to different people's and different bowls and be the kind of rogue apple in a bunch of strawberries. But actually, that's okay. And then there are other people that are fruit salads. And so what I realized was, my response to how I felt in terms of not belonging was to kind of question, why do I feel like I don't belong? And realize it's because I'm trying to belong in just one place. And maybe it's possible that I belong in more than just one place. And then suddenly that kind of gave me a gift, because if I only hang out with just clowns, after a while I'm craving business, or I'm craving coaching conversations or personal development conversations. If I hang out just with mums, I'm craving sport conversations. You get the idea, right? And then
Yes.
suddenly it was like, that's my response, because probably until my early 30s, or maybe, no, not that long, probably until my mid 20s, I don't think I ever felt like I belonged. I went to a private school, I was the slightly oddball. I sort of discovered that if I was funny, I could kind of get on anywhere, right? And so that kind of always gave me, but funny, as I wrote about in one of my shows, funny is a
A
shield.
box.
It's a box, right?
A box.
And it's a shield.
Right.
Yeah, it's a shield. And so when I really started to do my work on me, which started at drama school, I realized that the fact that I don't feel like I belong is also because I'm too scared to hold up the mirror to look at me. And actually, you have to hold up the mirror to look at who you are. And then you can work out where do you belong. Because first and foremost, you have to kind of belong with yourself. Home is me, right? This is a building that I live in, and that's lovely, and I'm grateful. But home is me. So if I don't feel like I belong, that's because of me, not because of society.
Fruit salad encompasses so visually what I feel. So thank you for that. And I bet for a lot of people how they want to view, how they would like to view their sense of belonging. You've led me right into the fifth critical choice. So the fifth critical choice for me was to embrace my boundless capacity to love. And again, I'm going to set some context. For Trish on her journey, I couldn't make the choice to give love the verb or to receive it until I had made those other choices. For me, it was linear. For other people, it's not linear. For me, it was very linear, and that prepared me and evolved me as a human being, and just as Trish, who I am, looking at myself in the mirror, until finally I realized what was truly missing was embracing the knowledge that there's no cap to my ability to love. So in fact, I don't need to guard it or withhold it because it's actually endless. I get to choose if I give it, if I show up in this interaction and give it, and I get to choose if I receive it from you. But it's there. So that was my choice. And it continues to be a choice. It continues to be a choice. But this is what I want to get into. When I say give and receive love, the verb, lots of times people will say, well, what does that mean? And I'll always turn it back to them and say, well, what does it mean to you? Because I think it manifests for different people in different situations at different times. Will you share with us love, the verb, the choice, the action? How does that manifest in your world? Or just an example of how that manifests in your world?
I think I struggled with love when I was younger. So my dad died when I was 10. And my dad was full of love and full of awesomeness and hope. But his death left a big vacuous hole. And my mum, to put it in a very British, polite way, is quite tricky and quite complex. And that lack of love that I felt from her impacted me, as it would do, because I was a kid, all the way until probably my early 30s, right? And this is what I mean about doing the work and carry on doing the love. And I remember there was a moment where I made a decision to go and do a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And so I went and did Vipassana. Now, all of your lovely listeners, and you don't, have only just met me, but I quite like chatting. This is kind of what I do. So I went there partly because I'm slightly competitive to kind of see if I could do it. Can I achieve this? I don't know. And actually going there was one of the biggest acts of doing love for myself that I've ever done, because what it enabled, that silence. And at this point, I'd had a few conversations with my friend about potentially having a kid. He really wanted to have a kid, and I had gone no, because I wanted to stop the sort of the pattern of trauma that my childhood had been, and for my sister and things. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And it was because I was scared of that act of love and what motherhood could mean, and that I could change it and be conscious and shift, right? And I went and did this 10-day silence. And some of it was very hard. Some of it was beautiful. Some of it was very hard. If I mentioned some of it was hard. And I came out of it, and with that silence, with no other noise. And you can't read and you can't write and you can't do exercise and you can't look people in the eye, right? You are just meditating every day. And I came out of that and I realized that I could choose to love, and I could allow myself, if I was blessed to have a kid, to have a kid. And that was my biggest shift of knowing that I can not be in charge of love, because I don't believe we can be in charge of it. But what I realized, that I could open my heart to allow it, because it's all around. And I wasn't going to be limiting my capacity for love and to receive love based upon the trauma that I had as a kid. And that was the moment where I went, yeah, that's a big act of love. And now I have a nearly 12-year-old preteen who's taller than me. That's not hard. I'm 5'2.5", but he's a giant and I love him.
And he gives and receives, and you give it and receive
Mm-hmm.
it. Thank you. So how about this? Thank you for choosing, because we can't make time, we can only make choices. Mm-hmm. Choosing to spend your time with me, choosing to give your love to me today, and for allowing me to receive everything that you give. I believe in my entire being that every single person has the power to create true success, enduring success, lasting success, when we choose to show up in every interaction with the intent of giving all and receiving all. And not only does that fuel our enduring success, but it actually fuels the success of those around us. And that is what you do every day in the M world, in the orange world, in the laugh, think, and play global movement, as a mom, as a partner, as a friend, and as a mentor. You're awesome. I will give everybody the ways to get a hold of Em, so you will be able to find her. And for the clients and teams that I work with around the US, oh my gosh, I will help you check her out and laugh, think, play, and how that can help impact your organization and the culture that you're trying to drive. Do you want to say one more thing before we say goodbye?
I just want to say thank you. And I feel very blessed when I get asked to come on cool podcasts like this, and you have a gift as an interviewer. So thank you for sharing your story and your truth, because, you know, you've got things out of me that I don't think I've ever said publicly before. And I've done quite a lot of podcasts. So I want to say thank you. And thank you for giving me this space, because it's been beautiful and brilliant.
Feel better. Yeah. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us for this interview. Choose and become. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Choose and Become interview series. To check out more episodes, go to www.trishkendall.com/podcast, or go to any of your favorite podcast channels, including YouTube, under Trish Kendall Speaks, and you'll find this interview and more. Choose and become.